When a game tells a great story, that story is great forever. Or is it? Rather than being unimpeachably, permanently good, that story can be undermined when a later game goes on to retroactively modify the events that came before it, changing what you thought you knew about the original. These retroactive continuity changes, aka retcons, cast the previous game in a new light, sometimes for the better and sometimes very not. Don't take our word for it. Strap in for these 7 times a sequel undermined an earlier game with its meddling. Enjoy, and beware spoilers for the following games.
You got knocked out of the target memory and pushed back to a more stable state.
Why?
It's your subconscious. It's resisting. We've found similar reactions among patients who undergo hypnosis to relive traumatic events. They can't jump directly into the specific memory. They need to be eased in. Even then, there can be problems.
Despite making a bad first impression as the assistant of the evil Dr. Vidic in the original Assassin's Creed, Lucy Stillman ended up as our favourite member of your ragtag group of modern-day assassins, partly because the alternatives included a sentient Abercrombie & Fitch mannequin and Sean Hastings.
But what do you think all this is for? Eh? You think Lucy is giving you Ezio's abilities so you can build schools in South America and deliver rice to starving Indonesians? What are you, Desmond, a vegan? You'd be the first vegan assassin in history.
But mostly we liked Lucy on account of how she turned out to be working for the good guys all along.
Just try and have a little faith. Have faith. Rest up, Desmond. You're gonna need the energy.
Who can forget how, at the start of Assassin's Creed 2, she busted us out of Abstergo's prison lab, where we were being experimented on, to a marginally more pleasant existence, where we had to be near Sean Hastings.
I also provide tactical support for the other assassins. You know, Desmond, the ones who are out there, actually doing stuff, risking their lives, little things like that.
This triumphant moment was a big twist for the series and really announced Ubisoft's intentions to turn Assassin's Creed into a major franchise, setting up further stories down the road and really highlighting the enormity of the historical war between the Assassins and the Templars that, while well known now, was actually a closely guarded plot secret prior to the first game's release.
I think we've been wrong all along. That's why we need to get out of here. Vidic and the Templars, they're only part of the problem.
What do you mean?
I'll explain when we get there.
Get where?
Then along came the third game in the series, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, in which Desmond discovers an Apple of Eden and, having learned nothing from literally any media involving ancient, mysterious, glowing objects, puts his hands all over it.
And that's a Masonic eye. Now those two come together in only one place.
What's happening? I can't move.
Desmond is possessed by Juno, one of the surviving members of the ancient demigod First Civilization. Juno realizes that, surprise, Lucy is apparently a Templar traitor, so Juno makes Desmond fatally stab Lucy.
It is done.
That's right, Lucy actually was a Templar this whole time, contrary to all the information in the first 2 games, and she was only helping Desmond so she could get to the Piece of Eden. Despite being in the series from the very beginning, despite being probably the most important person in terms of helping former bartender Desmond discover his assassin abilities, Lucy is unceremoniously killed off for seemingly no reason other than A, to make Desmond sad and guilty in the next game, and B, so they didn't have to keep paying increasingly famous voice actress Kristen Bell. That's right, she's also Anna from Frozen.
You're still stuck here working for these nutjobs.
But I'm alive. Anyway, I really do need to get the Animus repaired.
So yes, it does somewhat undermine the story of the original Assassin's Creed to know that Eleanor from The Good Place is bad, actually, and only helping you escape for evil reasons. But it doesn't matter anyway, because you'll later stab her against your will.
What are you doing?
The path must be opened.
And with Sean Hastings standing right there with his stabbable torso, unforgivable.
They're all dead. No.
I didn't hear anything about using the perfect soldier, did you? He's supposed to be undergoing readjustments.
You'll forgive us for not fully keeping track of the convoluted overarching plot of the Metal Gear series, which has the most baffling video game storyline since this NES game where you play the floating disembodied ghost head of a dead samurai and fight the Statue of Liberty by firing eyeballs and vomit at it. Your move, Shakespeare. One thing we do remember is the brilliant fight against Grey Fox in Metal Gear Solid, who is introduced as a mysterious cyborg ninja whose mere presence is so terrifying he causes grown adults to spontaneously wet themselves.
Stealth camouflage? Who are you?
Useful in a combat situation, probably quite inconvenient when he's popping to the shops for a loaf of bread. This cyborg ninja has a tragic backstory though, as it's revealed in a dramatic twist that he is actually Grey Fox, a character you first encountered in a prior game.
Do you remember me now?
Can't be. You were killed in Zanzibar.
Yes, Grey Fox is a character who Snake had previously faced and beaten in lesser-known previous game in the series Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, where they had a dramatic fistfight, or at least as dramatic a fistfight as the technology allowed in 1990. After that fight, Grey Fox is effectively atomised. So it's a bit of a surprise to discover in Metal Gear Solid that he is not, in fact, deader than Disco, and was forcibly experimented on to turn him into the aforementioned terrifying cyborg ninja.
They fitted him with a prototype exoskeleton and kept him drugged for 4 years while they experimented on him like a plaything. Today's genome soldiers were born from those experiments.
That's the sickest thing I ever heard.
He means sick as in bad, not sick as in sick. I mean, I assume. Either way, 2006 PSP game Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, which is set in 1970, went on to undermine this entire storyline and one of Metal Gear Solid's biggest dramatic twists by deciding that actually Grey Fox had been an augmented super soldier for 35 years, long before Solid Snake atomised him in Metal Gear 2.
He's incapable of emotions or doubts. He's the ultimate combatant.
The result was we lost a great revenge story where, beaten in fair combat by Snake and close to death, unaugmented Grey Fox was unwillingly turned into a cybernetic super soldier and returned to settle the score.
I am a prisoner of death. Only you can free me.
It also diminished Metal Gear Solid's heartbreaking final hour, where Fox sacrificed himself to help stop the giant mech Metal Gear Rex.
Fighting was the only thing I was good at.
I mean, this probably isn't the time to say, but you weren't that good at fighting.
Tremble, mortals, and despair. Doom has come to this world. You have done well, little lich. My plan worked perfectly.
If Warcraft 3 is to be believed, demons are real, powerful, and love a massive pair of pauldrons. I mean, who doesn't?
Hail, mighty Manaroth. How goes the invasion? Bah, these frail humans offer no real resistance.
At the same time, we're led to believe that even the most powerful demons can be killed. Otherwise, why would we work so hard at trying to kill them? Specifically, here at the end of Warcraft 3, with the brutal demon lord Manaroth and his even more impressive boss, Archimond the Defiler. He sounds chill.
Are there none left to stand against the Legion?
You don't need me to tell you Manaroth is eventually slain by Gromash Hellscream in an act of heroic, character-defining self-sacrifice.
I have freed myself. No, old friend. You've freed us all.
Nor do I need to remind you that, through the unprecedented collaboration of humans, orcs and night elves, and at a terrible cost including the very immortality of the night elves themselves, Archimond the Defiler is fatally exploded by a swarm of ancestral spirits. The important thing is, despite the huge sacrifices, we could rest easy knowing that these mighty demons were utterly destroyed, dead and gone forever.
Just as the orcs, humans and night elves discarded their old hatreds and stood united against a common foe, so did nature herself rise up to banish the shadow forever.
Except several years later, along came massively multiplayer, massively popular RPG World of Warcraft, and it needed raid bosses. To To that end, in the 5th World of Warcraft expansion, Warlords of Draenor, the nature of demons was significantly retroactively changed, such that if demons are killed in the real world, their souls go back to the otherworldly dimension of the Twisting Nether, where they reform. These days, demons are only really permanently dead if they're killed in the Twisting Nether itself.
Every demon we slay here dies their final death. Do not hold back.
This change was what made possible the resurrection of both Manaroth and Archimonde in World of Warcraft. Good news for loot-hungry raiding guilds. Bad news for everyone else who paid the ultimate price to slay these giant demons the first time around, especially Grommash Hellscream, whose sacrifice hits a little different now. Hey, at least he's still called Grommash Hellscream. That is badass.
The big bad of Super Mario World was regular series villain Bowser, who lives in a big castle at the end of the game, where he flies around in a weird clown-faced helicopter, throwing clockwork Koopas at anyone who stops by to say hello. As you can see, he's a busy turtle thing, and so he needed to rely on outside help to guard the other lands in Super Mario World. As such, each of the lands you travel through in that game is guarded by one of 7 Koopalings, wild-haired, kid-looking turtles first seen in Super Mario Bros. 3, who we were told at the time were Bowser's children. Which, to be honest, made it a bit more harrowing that, to advance in the game, you had to pump them into some lava and then dynamite their home. But whatever. However, later games in the Mario series gave us Bowser Jr., who was introduced as Bowser's only child, and who actually looked like Bowser in addition to being called, you know, Bowser Jr. He was also clearly as dedicated to being deeply annoying as his father.
Papa told me everything. He said, Mario's a bully, he never fights fair.
This raised the question of, if Bowser Jr. is Bowser's kid, then who exactly are these Koopalings? It wasn't an issue until New Super Mario Bros. Wii, when the Koopalings returned, billed as Bowser's, quote, minions, the family connection struck from the record. Now, you're probably wondering, why should I care about whether this fictional turtle has 1 kid or 8 kids? To which I would answer that it's much, much funnier to imagine Bowser as the harried parent of 7 additional kids, each of which has got a ridiculous punk hairstyle and clearly thinks that their dad is super dorky. Also, I think it adds some much needed nuance to the Mario and Bowser relationship. It certainly makes Bowser a lot more justified in throwing clockwork Koopas at Mario when you know that Mario is fresh off killing 7 of his children. Is that why he made clockwork minions? To take the place of his murdered children? So no one else he loved would have to die? Anyway, in conclusion, that's why Super Mario World is the most heartbreaking game in video game history. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
You're to return to infinity immediately.
Negative infinity. I don't like it.
Whoever they are, let's get to Meridian before they do.
Kelly, no.
No need to do this by yourself, Chief.
They won't court-martial all of us, right?
Back when the very first Halo game, Halo Combat Evolved, was released for the original Xbox, the developers at Bungie could never have imagined that this modest sci-fi yarn would become a heaving fictional universe spanning video games, live-action series, and approximately 400,000 expanded universe novelizations. The thing is, that Halo universe has changed a lot as we've gone from a single game in 2001 to where we are now, which is playing Master Chief Collection for a 3rd time while they make Halo Infinite look a bit less like an Xbox 360 game. What? We were all thinking it. One of those changes, though, retrospectively tarnishes our experience of the first game. You see, in the original Halo Combat Evolved, our understanding was that player character Master Chief was the very last of the Spartan 2 genetically modified soldiers in the entire galaxy, based predominantly on this passage in the video game's manual, which follows thus.
Existing Spartan 2 soldiers are recalled to reach for further augmentation. The plan? Board a Covenant vessel with the improved Spartan 2s and learn the location of the Covenant homeworld. 2 days before the mission begins, Covenant forces strike Reach and annihilate the colony. The Covenant are now on Earth's doorstep. One ship, the Pillar of Autumn, escapes with the last Spartan 2 and makes a blind jump into deep space, hoping to lead the Covenant away from Earth. Excuse me.
This gave Halo a unique atmosphere. Not only were we the only 7-foot-tall badass super soldier in the galaxy, there was a degree of tragic pathos to being the last of a dying breed and humanity's only hope. As Chief, you were the final remaining Spartan with the weight of responsibility resting on your, admittedly, massive shoulders. I mean, unless you played it in the entirely non-canon co-op mode. Master Chief's mate, Jeremy Chief, there? Several games later in Halo 5 Guardians though, you can't travel 5 light years without tripping over another Spartan 2, who was just presumably hanging around somewhere, twiddling their giant thumbs, while we were busy single-handedly saving the galaxy. Take Frederick 104 here, who was literally at the same training academy as Master Chief at the same time.
I haven't seen Chief press himself like this since we were in boot camp.
What exactly were you training for, Fred? How to not help at all during the Battle of Installation 04? Then there was Halo Wars 2, where it turns out 3 more Spartan 2s have just been floating in space, only waking up 7 years after the destruction of the Alpha Halo in the first game. Hope they appreciated the lie-in.
Isabel, where are the survivors? What's the strength of the Covenant force here?
Covenant? No, why would... Listen, you're in incredible danger.
All this reframes the events of the first Halo game as less about a lone warrior, the last of his kind, standing against impossible odds, and instead about something far more boring. Mismanagement of vital military resources. If I were Master Chief, I'd be livid.
You good?
Look, he can't even speak to him. Furious.
In the complicated legal world of the Ace Attorney games, the job of a prosecutor is to be a supernaturally attractive badass who spends their entire professional life dunking on nerdy defense attorneys, like you. Among all these flashy, ice-cold, achingly hip prosecutors, however, one stood out as the epitome of legal cool, a lawyer who didn't even have to resort to throwing boiling hot coffee in your face to get their point across. I am, of course, talking about Miles Edgeworth, your opponent in the very first Ace Attorney game. In a series known for smug, punchable jerks, Edgeworth is the smuggest, most punchable jerk you'll come across, and it wouldn't be so bad if he weren't so good at his job. He's constantly producing new evidence, surprise witnesses, and, his absolute favourite, updated autopsy reports that just so happen to handily contradict the desperate seat-of-your-pants case that you just spent the last 45 minutes cobbling together out of sweatiness and conjecture. Throughout the early cases in the game, though, it is hinted that there is a darker side to Edgeworth's success. There are whispers and rumours that Edgeworth is so desperate to win at any cost that he's even committed the ultimate lawyerly sin of forging evidence to ensure that he delivers the guilty verdict he needs to maintain his perfect courtroom record. As such, when you do finally manage to defeat Edgeworth in court, the victory feels all the sweeter, knowing that you have beaten a pompous evil jerk who, by all accounts, was probably also cheating. When it first came out for the Game Boy Advance in 2001, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney had 4 cases. When it was re-released for the Nintendo DS in 2005, they added a new 5th case, which was brilliant, but it must be said, did irreparable damage to our image of Edgeworth as an unprincipled law scoundrel. In this new case, we hear about a case from 2 years prior, in which it becomes apparent that Edgeworth has never and would never even dream of forging evidence. The case revolves around a single time when Edgeworth unknowingly presented false evidence due to the machinations of another actually evil character. Which is fair enough. Edgeworth is a great character, and since the first game he has evolved into one of the series' most popular and likeable characters, with his own spin-off series of detective games. But this change to the first game made a lot of his character development throughout the first 4 cases somewhat pointless, as it turned out that Edgeworth wasn't becoming a better person thanks to our kindness and law skills. He was just always a nice guy, and we were taken in by scurrilous rumours. Honestly, so confusing. At least with the flashy prosecutors, you know where you stand. Right here, with a mug of coffee on my face.
The Soul Chamber will heal your wounds. Then we'll discipline Kitana and take back our throne.
Empress? Tell me I misheard. Tell me you would not betray your daughter.
It might come as some surprise to you to discover that the old 2D Mortal Kombat games had a storyline that went beyond just man pulls someone's spine out of their neck hole. The entire thing is obviously a battle between good and evil, but it's also about the warring realms of Earthrealm, Outworld, and a lush, peaceful place called Edenia. Introduced in Mortal Kombat 3, Sindel is the former Queen of Edenia and mother of series' favourite heroine Kitana. She's got a powerful scream, and hair that has a life of its own. I mean, really has a life of its own. It's going to take a lot more than a Tangle teaser to sort that lot out. In this first appearance, Sindel is introduced as an evil antagonist, but it's revealed over the course of the series that she was originally a benevolent Queen of Edenia, who was captured by series' big bad Shao Kahn, and who, in order to escape a life of subservience and to protect Kitana, killed herself. Although probably not quite like this. It can be difficult to reconcile Sindel's allegedly kind nature with the fact that she's out here screaming people's skin off. But that's because by the events of Mortal Kombat 3, some 10,000 years later, she'd been resurrected using dark magic and brainwashed by Shao Kahn. It's not until her ending sequence where she's shown as a tragic heroine who has finally been freed from the spell and reunited with her daughter. Alright, it's not exactly Tolstoy, but it's not bad character development for a series that also has a rubbish joke fighter named after a Prince song.
Rain wins.
I understood that reference. This version of Sindel survived the series reboot in 2011, but the most recent game in the series, Mortal Kombat 11, caused outrage among longtime fans when Sindel was reintroduced as a DLC character in the new Aftermath storyline.
Prepare to pay for your brother's sins.
Sindel, you look well.
In Aftermath, it's revealed that her supposed redemption was actually all a big lie, she's super into Shao Kahn, and she was actually your regular, bog-standard, one-dimensional evil queen all along.
Here was a man unashamed to assert his privilege, and who vowed to protect mine. I had found my true love.
As her official bio for MK11 reveals, the character is no longer motivated by a more complex cocktail of tragedy, revenge and redemption, and instead by basic stuff like power and wealth. Although to be fair to Sindel, think how much she must have to spend each month on hair care products. Suddenly it all makes sense.
Shall we?
Thank you, friends, for watching this video brought to you by me, Jane Douglas, and also Andy, and Mike was in there too, on this channel, Outside Xbox. We'd like to thank you for watching and also for subscribing, if you do. And if you don't, why not subscribe? Also, why not hit the bell button there, somewhere, and ask for a notification every time we publish a video, because, in case you didn't know, we make a video like this one every single week, and you can know as soon as it's up and ready to watch if you were just to do that thing I said earlier. Anyway, think about it. We appreciate you being here, and maybe see you next time on Outside Xbox.